Next question comes from I don't know where I missed it. Oh, okay. Nico Bellic. Who do you think Denver should get for next season? Denver's another team where you kind of have to look at their spending power and realize that there's a legitimate chance, if a Will Barton opts out, if they want to re-sign Paul Millsap, if Jermichael Green opts out, and they want to bring these guys back, they're going to be working with the mini mid level, which is 5.7 million. As a really good team, they might be in a better position than most to get someone good with that. At the same time, they're not among the glamour markets, and more than that. And I'm not trying to advocate for glamour markets here, but they're not a team that's shown that they're going to cannonball deep into the luxury tax. And Jamal Murray's injury kind of complicates that for them, because I would tell you right now, and I'm never going to, I don't care about team governors spending their money. I'm not trying to get billionaires to pay less in luxury tax. I want to make that clear. I'm trying to deal with the reality of the situation. When you don't have Jamal Murray, your absolute best shot at a championship has been squandered. This team is just, it's legitimately a lot weaker without him. Are you going to be willing to spend? Even if you can open up, and they can, if they don't want to bring back Paul Millsap, let's say Will Barton opts in, let's say Jermichael Green opts in, it gets easier to stay within under the apron to use the full non-taxpayers mid-level, which is like a hair under $10 million this season. And so that would open up a lot more options for them. I'm curious to see what they're willing to spend. Now, that being said, there are two ways that they could go if they were going to funnel their best spending tool. Let's assume that they use one of it. There's a couple different routes they could go if they're going to spend it on one player. You need another ball handler type to replace Jamal Murray, because off of a normal ACL recovery timeline, he's going to miss most or all of next season. And because he's so young, I know there's going to be the urgency. You want to see what he looks like with Aaron Gordon there and Michael Porter Jr. before both those two dudes are on different contracts. He's going to miss at least most of next year. So do you want another ball handler because you don't think it's going to be Facundo Campazzo and Monte Morris really getting you there? And Jokic does need relief. I would argue you don't necessarily need that, especially if Will Barton is coming back, because he can give you some pressure on the rim and some initiation on offense as well. You also have Michael Porter Jr. If he's healthy and not having back problems, no, he's not a creator, but we've seen that he can be basically a star on offense. And so I don't know that you need to go out there searching for another guy who could create his own shots. Maybe if you're trying to find a table setter, can you bring back Austin Rivers, who I think was really good for them? Yeah, you should not be spending your entire mid-level exception on him. I want to make that absolutely clear. The other route that they could go is focus on their wing defense, because they got burned there. Like, that was a big problem that they had in the playoffs. Even that, you go up against Portland and you beat them, but like, that was still just something that they struggled with. I don't know who you can get. This comes back to with what you could spend. If you have the non-taxpayers mid-level exception, someone like a Reggie Bullock might become realistic. He could really help you. You could maybe take a flyer on Otto Porter. Trevor Ariza's like 80 now. I don't know how interested in him you're going to be. Tony Snell's a free agent, and he might be able to come fairly cheap. You could look at bringing in Wes Matthews. He plays well for spurts defensively still. I just don't know how many minutes you're going to get out of him. Derek Jones Jr. could be interesting. I just don't think he's going to opt out of that money in Portland. He wasn't even playing for them when they rolled into the postseason. I think you can argue that he should have been, but he is a liability on offense, and he shot a higher clip than normal from three in Portland, which it seems like any wing who just goes to Portland is most likely going to shoot a higher percentage than normal from three. I mentioned Danny Green for them would be really good. What you can do, I guess, is look at trades for Denver, and just, you're going to make moves on the margins. Maybe they're not even willing to spend whatever version of the tax of the mid-level exception, that they're working with. And so they're looking to exchange contract for contracts. That gets really difficult for them, because they don't just have a ton of these middle money contracts you can move. Jokic, Murray, off limits, of course. I don't know why you get rid of Aaron Gordon when you need to improve your defense. And he checked a lot of, the smaller players for them. And I thought he held up pretty well, aside from, all the inconsistency on offense. Jermichael Green, if he opts in, that's okay. That's 7.6, but that's your fifth highest paid player as of right now. Will Barton is the player that I'd be looking at if he opts in, 14.7 million. I honestly don't have a feel for that player option. he was injured a lot of this year, and I don't think he would get as much money per year on the open market. That being said, there's a talent drain in free agency. So maybe he's not getting 14.7, $15 million a year. Is someone going to give him like 4 and 48 though? And so you're getting, an extra $33 million, let's say, in guaranteed salary over 4 years. But if you still have him, if he opts in, what can you attach to sort of make a deal there? And a player that I would honestly, this could be a decent swap for swap. Maybe Dallas needs to send Denver something else just based off the season Josh Richardson had. But Josh Richardson in Denver makes a bunch of sense for them. If Dallas, I'm assuming Josh Richardson opts in. Maybe not. Again, this free agency market is always going to be weird. But if you could do something like that, that could really help you. The other thing, if you want to take a bigger swing, and I'm not sure how willing Boston would be to do this after making the Kemba Walker trade and giving themselves more immediate cap flexibility and long term. But Marcus Smart is extension eligible this year. They can give him up to a maximum of $17.2 million. If Marcus Smart wants that amount or more and isn't willing to sign, Boston has to look at, one, are we willing to, let's say he'll sign an extension. Are you willing to pay him 17.2? If you're not willing to pay him that, you can't risk him going into the open market because there's a chance that he might get more as a starting salary. And you have to look at moving him. The trade I came up with was Monte Morris, Zeke Naji, and then the number 27 pick. Assume that happens after the draft so that everyone can trade their draft picks legally and the Stepien rule doesn't come into play. Any sticklers out there for the CBA like myself. I don't know that Najee really moves the needle for Boston anymore now that they have Moses Brown in addition to Al Horford, in addition to Robert Williams, in addition to Grant Williams. So there need to be other moving parts there. The Nuggets do have Bol Bol. They have PJ Dozier as well. They need better point guard play. And Monte Morris is about to start a 3-year, $27 million extension, which is super team friendly. Might be the best backup point guard in the league. Is certainly going to give you better creation in the playoffs than a Peyton Pritchard, who we saw them lean on. The number 26 pick, Boston did just trade its own first round pick. So getting another prospect there, not a bad thing. And I know they'll run into some roster spot crunches. You're not going to trade a distant first round pick for him. And the Nuggets, I think, already traded 2023 is going to Orlando. I can double check that while I'm recording this. But so it would have to be like a Bol Bol or a PJ Dozier. And if it's Dozier, I would question whether you should do it, knowing Marcus Smart's going to head towards free agency. But I think that sort of framework with the number 26 pick and then Monte Morris and then something else is how Denver traded away 2025 as well. That's headed to Orlando. 2023 is going to Oklahoma City. So that's not going to happen. Would I do PJ Dozier, Monte Morris, and number 26? I think Denver's the one that's probably giving up a ton there. I'd still probably do it if I'm them. I don't know how important Dozier is to you if Will Barton is still going to be there and you have Michael Porter Jr. and you have Aaron Gordon. He's on a super bare bones deal and he can shoot threes and he can give you some defense, but Marcus Smart really elevates your defense. You do, of course, then run into the issue of Smart, Gordon, Porter, restricted free agency, or his extension is kicking in. Plus, maybe Will Barton would all be hitting free agency or set to take on new deals at the same time. I think with Smart, though, with Denver, you can look in the mirror and say, okay, we don't have Jamal Murray, but our championship window is just still open this season. And that's the move if you're Denver, is can you make that bigger swing on the trade market? I don't think that they'll have the guts to do it after they already did it with Aaron Gordon and were sort of burned by the Murray injury. That would be the type of move, though, that I think would really elevate their needle